Alright, you guys, it's been a minute since I've done a chapter review, but we got so much new information in this latest chapter, so I needed to talk about it. From us finally getting more information about Charles' true purpose in the NEL, to the new updated rankings post Mannheim vs. Ubers and PXG vs. Bachira. I want to discuss all this and more, but before that, if you enjoyed the Blue Lock content from chapter reviews to rankings, then please like, comment, subscribe to my channel, since everything and anything helps. As always, with the chapter reviews, I'll provide a quick summary of the chapter just so everyone is caught up, then dive into all the details regarding the chapter. So chapter 246 starts on the Germany training field where we see Kiyora and the monk practicing together, where the monk immediately gets dropped by Kiyora. We also see that Noah is watching all this from a distance. We then cut to the rest of the Bastard team in the monitor room where we see the new rankings with 35 players now having bids, but we are reminded that only the top 23 will be considered representatives of the U20 Japan team. We start to go through the rankings and we see players such as Sendo is now in the 13th spot, while ness is just out of the top 23 at 24th place. We also see that Nagi and Ryo are both out of the top 10, now being at the 11th and 16th spot. We see them realizing that they're still struggling and still need to make changes. Shidou is now in the top 4, which makes him very happy, and he now aims for that top spot. Plus, Isagi and Baru are tied for second, with this being Baru's final ranking, and Rin is at the top spot with a value of 198 million. Once we are finished the rankings, Noah walks in and tells the Bastard team that no matter what their own personal motivations are, the one goal of the team is to show their abilities calmly and rationally and to win. Then he tells them that they will discuss their strategy for the final game. We then cut to France's locker room where we see them meeting after having just finished their game against Bachira. We see Loki telling his team that they did a good job and breaking down how each individual player can improve. But as he's talking, Charles is trying to leave the room, so Loki kicks a ball at him. Loki tells him that he hasn't given Charles his homework yet, but Charles says that these meetings are so long. But Loki reminds Charles that the only reason he's at the NEL is because Loki is nurturing him to be a passer that will help him to reach the top of the football world. And he's only 15, so that means he's younger than Loki and needs to be learning from the NEL so that he could become the best along with him. Charles continues to tease Loki but decides to listen, and Loki explains that he has been experimenting with the two different systems of Rin and Shidou, switching them in and out throughout matches. But now they're going up against Bastard, another undefeated team that also has an opposing system of Izaki and Kaiser. So going into the final match, Rin and Shidou will be the double aces that will be considered as an irregular and abnormal formation, meaning this will be a full-out brawl of opposing ideologies. So we got a lot from this chapter, and I'll break it down in order of how we see everything. First, starting with that brief moment of Kiyora and the monk. Clearly, this is setting them up for playing in the final match, which is guaranteed for Kiyora and more than likely for the monk. But it does seem that Kiyora is taking this seriously and really wanting to do well in this final match. But what I also found interesting is seeing that Noah was watching them train, clearly showing that he is invested in the development of these players, and farther showing that likely Noah sees something in Kiyora, which is why he guaranteed that he will play in the next match and is watching him train. But I also wonder why Naru, the U20 speedster defender, is not a part of this training session, since he also hasn't gotten a chance to play. So I hope this just means that maybe he's getting his own individual training. It wasn't purposely left out, since that would be pretty rude. Now discussing these new rankings next, there overall was not major surprises in these rankings. We knew players such as Sendo and Shidou were going to get major boosts because they scored in their matches, and Nagi and Ryo were likely going to fall even farther down in rankings considering they did just as bad in this match as they did in the previous one. First, starting with Nagi and Ryo, I've explained in several other videos why Nagi needs to go on this journey, but it does suck seeing my favorite NEL team doing so bad. And now going into the final match with Bachira, it really is the battle of just who is not going to get the title of the worst NEL team. Since in the beginning of the arc, if you said that Munchen was going to be the worst team in the NEL, it would have sounded like a joke since they have such talented players. But Nagi's lack of motivation is bringing down the entire team. I mean, I understand he needs the character development, but it would be nice for Munchen to get at least one dub before the arc ends. I mean, honestly, if Chris Prince wanted to make the smart decision for the final match, he would remove Nagi as the center of the team and make the new center Chigiri, since he has more than proven through this arc that he's a consistently good player and is really holding the team on his back at this point. I mean, I feel bad for both Chigiri and Bachira because they're in similar situations on their team where it's like the equivalent of doing a group project where you keep doing your part and doing it very well, but because the rest of your team just keeps not doing their part, you keep failing the overall project, and it has got to be frustrating. So like I said, the smart move would be to make Chigiri the new center, and honestly, he should have been made the center at this point. But the reason I think why Chris Prince wants to keep Nagi as the center is because he's the more flashy player, being able to do super goals like the 5-shot revolver, while Chigiri not as flashy, even though I think his speed does make him super cool and flashy. Chigiri is more precise, quick, and gets the job done, while Nagi puts on more of a show with his goals, which gets more attention from the media, which Chris Prince wants, since clearly a big motivation for Chris Prince for coming to the league was to get more media attention through brand deals, photo shoots, and more. And he probably thinks he can get more of those with Nagi as the center since he is a fan favorite from the public. But at this point, the best move would be either to just make Chigiri the center of the team or just have him share the position with Nagi. So I will definitely be interested to see if any changes will be made to Munchen's formation for the last game. And speaking of Chigiri, just a bit more before I move on, as a Chigiri fan, I do feel like he was done a bit dirty in this chapter since he only got a 5 million boost. So that means he's more than likely not the one that scored that one goal in the Ubers match. But it feels confusing why the author wouldn't just give Chigiri the goal. And I was discussing this with other people, and the consensus that was kind of reached of why this was the case is that the author is most likely pushing a narrative between Kunigami and Chigiri being rivals, which is why they were both at the 5th place spot in the last ranking, and now having them next to each other in this new ranking. So Chigiri couldn't do too well in this match because he had to justifiably be next to Kunigami. Anyways, I might save more of my thoughts about this in the future, but just as for Chigiri, he better get at least 2 goals in the final game. Also, this means that Augie more than likely was the one that scored that 1 goal, since he's the only other relevant character on that team. But honestly, him being so mad at Nagi still being the center, so he made sure to score a goal in the match just so he could trash talk him after, along with Ryo, would low-key be hilarious. And I'm still pushing the Nishioka agenda, is secretly a good player, but he only got 3 million in this match, so that means he wasn't the one that scored. But don't worry, you guys, he'll go crazy in the final match and make top 23. The agenda is still alive. He was just feeling a little bit sore in this match, you guys. But anyways, let's quickly also talk about Shidou and Sendo as the other standout placements in this new ranking. I didn't get a chance to review the previous chapters, but it's amazing to see Sendo beat the fraud allegations since I know the community was getting worried that the author wasn't going to utilize Shidou. So it's great to see him doing well since his character has some of the coolest parts in the manga. So it feels good knowing that Shidou is going to be a big part of the final match since it wouldn't feel the same if he wasn't. I also wanted to quickly discuss Sendo's scoring and getting a good placement at 13th, which was really cool to see since I had actually predicted that if Ubers was going to get a win against Bastard, then it was probably going to be Sendo that made the final score, both as a redemption for not being able to score during the U20 match, and also because I was pretty confident that if Ubers had gotten another win, then it was likely the author wasn't going to give Maru another hat trick. So it's cool to see Sendo becoming more of a relevant character, since the author really let us know with giving him one of the best covers that Sendo is here to stay. Now let's move on to the part that I found most interesting about this chapter, which is the PXG locker room scene, since we finally got a taste of PXG's dynamic as a team and other interesting information. First, it was cool seeing Loki break down how each individual player can improve, since it's already showing good signs that he's a really good coach. As an undefeated team, Loki could have said they're doing well and keep it at that, but even with their consistent wins, Loki is telling each player how they can improve, including players that are as good as Rin, since he's telling him in which areas he can still be better at. We also find out the biggest piece of information from this scene, which is what is the true purpose of Charles. He is more than likely not a new Gen 11 player that we thought he was, but is still very important since he was specifically brought here by Loki to learn from the NEL, since Loki has revealed that he believes that Charles is the key to helping him become the best player in the world with his passes. And that is a huge statement to make, and honestly could be considered even more impressive than being announced as a new Gen 11 player, since we know that Loki is a pro player, making him above the new Gen 11s in terms of skill. So the fact that he believes that Charles' passes are good enough to make him the best in the world of football means that Charles is extremely talented and could be even more skilled than we initially thought, since he's getting praised by pro players. So Charles's true purpose is that the NEL is more than likely a test for Charles by Loki to see if he's ready for the pro world, since if he can't defeat U20 players, then he's not ready to help Loki go to the top against pros. This also shows that Loki's motivations for coming to the NEL are even deeper than I thought, since I thought he was using it as an opportunity to just get a bit more exposure as the newest face of the industry, but Loki is using this as an opportunity to train who he considers could be the next greatest passer in the world, since Loki wants to take Charles to the top as well. So this is all pretty crazy information, and it makes me even more excited to see Charles play and more scared for Bastard, since even though Charles is not a confirmed new Gen 11, the fact that he's the protege of Loki is still confirmation that he's an extremely good player. I have a whole theory about why PXG will lose against Bastard, and you should definitely check that out after this video if you haven't yet, but it does make me wonder that if PXG does lose, I wonder how Loki will react to that. Since clearly Loki's a lot more invested in the NEL than the other Master Strikers are, since he has personal reasons why it would be in his best benefit to win, besides of course just the money and exposure that you would get from having an undefeated team in the NEL. But before I end this video, while Charles is more than likely not the new Gen 11, so sorry to the over 60% of my viewers that thought it could be him, since I did as well, there is still hope for the 16% of my viewers that voted that Choppa could be the new Gen 11. I thought it was Choppy, but apparently it's Choppa. Now, if you're like, who is Choppa? Before this chapter, we got to see Choppa in a panel shot where during the PXG versus Ubers match, we see Aiku is defending against him, and a lot of people were confused why Aiku was defending against a random player on PXG and not Rin, which made people think that Choppa was an important player, such as a new Gen 11 player. And now in another panel shot, we see Choppa is sitting by Rin and Shidou, so the author keeps intentionally putting Choppa in shots where if he wasn't going to be a relevant character, then there'd be no reason to put him there. And I know some people might think this is reaching, but this is the same thing that was done with Lorenzo when he was being set up. He was put into the random background shots to make it seem like he was just another player, but then once the match started, it was revealed that he was a new Gen 11. And I think the author wanted to psych readers out by making it seem like Charles was the new Gen 11, but when the match starts, it'll be revealed that Choppa is actually the new Gen 11, which will make PXG even more broken as a team, but only time will tell. So for the people that were holding out hope that Choppa is going to be a relevant character, there's a lot of excitement with seeing this panel. Anyways, this is the end of my video. There's so much more that I wanted to talk about, but I think I'm just going to save it for future videos, such as that extremely cool last panel between Kaiser, Isagi versus Shidou and Rin. There's definitely a lot to discuss when it comes to that, but like I said, I'll save it for future videos. So if you enjoyed this video at least, then please subscribe and hit the post notification button so you don't miss any of my future videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!